commemoration of Anti-Corruption Day in Africa, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has written to the African Union calling for a renewed commitment to the anti-corruption war by African leaders. President Buhari wrote South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and the chairman of the African Union appealing to the African leaders to ensure immediate actualization of the common African position on asset recovery. He said such commitment will engender an integrated, prosperous and peaceful Africa, driven by citizens representing a dynamic force in the international arena. President Buhari also lamented the massive corruption being perpetrated in various governments of Africa. This is very important, what the president has talked about and the letter he has written this morning, because corruption has become endemic in this country. If not for anything, the NDDC issue currently going on now. Tundu, I'm sure you've got reactions to that this morning. There's the NDDC, there's the EFCC, there's every other issue going on. Everywhere you turn. Yes, it's really ridiculous. No, I agree with you. Yeah. Well written by the president. Yeah. Dr. Abati?
Well, you will recall that President Muhammadu Buhari, early last year, or was it in 2018, was chosen, recognized by the African Union as the anti-corruption champion of Africa. He was given the responsibility to provide the leadership in that regard. You will recall also that even in ECOWAS, he has also been given other recognitions. In part, a recognition of his own stature as a statesman, not just in Nigeria, but also in Africa, and also a recognition of the importance that he has attached as president of Nigeria to the anti-corruption campaign. So we see President Buhari, by writing that letter and talking about the need to fight corruption in Africa as part of his fulfillment of the honor that he has been given and the recognition that he has received from his brother presidents within the African Union. However, it is most ironic that this is coming at a time when Nigeria itself is embroiled in all kinds of controversies about corruption. The anti-corruption fight is supposed to be part of the legacy of President Muhammadu Buhari. And there have been concerns in the last week whether or not that legacy has been tarnished, whether or not there have been issues about the credibility of the anti-corruption campaign in Nigeria. So whoever advised the president to make this move, to go to the bigger stage, to take the initiative, may have advised him very well. But I think that his bigger concern will be how to protect his own legacy inside Nigeria. You recall that when he assumed office in 2015, he had 3 plans: the fight against insecurity, the fight against corruption, and then reviving the economy. And we have seen all of these 3 plans shaking. And I have always argued that, look, President Buhari's advisors should pay more attention to his legacy. I think the leg of the table about corruption is shaking at this moment.
Well, hasn't the leg broken yet?
No,
it's shaking with all of this.
The table has not collapsed.
A lot of people are arguing.
Shaking.
A lot of people are arguing, Dr. Abati, that this has been the most corrupt government in living memory. That's what they're saying now.
No, I can't.
That's what a lot of people are arguing.
No, I can't.
That it's just that corruption is swept under the carpet. But when you start to see these stories, the evidence of all this, you are shaken to your core. You are shell-shocked at the mammoth level of corruption. The NDDC, for instance, did you watch television yesterday? See the of how top officials, allegedly, I should say again, put monies that's supposed to be for the commission in their personal accounts.
Well, I cannot
that was denied, though,
I cannot comment on personality clashes or evidence that I'm not properly seized of. I always argue that, look, we should have the facts before we reach conclusions. The Buhari government is still a project in motion, or how do they say it? A project in progress. Before we can make definitive statements about what the president has achieved, that will be at the end of his tenure. I cannot, on the basis of television altercation between personalities in government, and then say this is the most corrupt. No, I cannot say that.
I'm not saying that. That's what people are. Yeah, that's what people are saying. Public opinion.
Yeah,
people tend to use hyperbole, don't they? Based on what facts.
We should not elevate, uninformed comments. So at the end of the day, you may well find that the administration will be able to score big on the tripod, at least maybe one or two of the tripods of his legacy. But I think for now, we should keep watching. And you can see that since the new chief of staff took over, that's Professor Ibrahim Gambari, and that's a leg of the analysis that we have not yet addressed. We've seen some important developments.
Yes. Yeah.
Whether it is because of the change of the chief of staff or not, or maybe President Buhari himself saying, look, I have to address these issues. I think with time, some of the details will come up. But I don't want to speculate.
Okay, so we don't have a very firm fact as regards this. And once we get the facts, we'll start to look at this.
But it's good to see the president, trying to rescue an important part of his legacy, both locally and also internationally. I don't have a problem with that. I think his advisors are doing well.
Yeah.
As Mr. Macaroni will say.
You keep quoting Mr. Macaroni.
Yeah, I'm very fond of him.
Okay, right. Do we have time for one more story?
Go ahead.
2 more minutes. The presidency has broken its silence on the ongoing investigation of the acting chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Ibrahim Magu. In a statement by Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity to the president explained why he approved the suspension of anti-corruption fighter from the office. He says by subjecting the head of one of its most critical agencies to an open probe, the administration has set a new record in the country's history by the move and strengthened the mantra that there were no sacred cows in fighting against corruption. He said the probe particularly sent out a strong message that the survival of the agency was more important than any individual because the EFCC was not built around anyone. I mean, this, what do I say now? This affirms what you were saying, that we shouldn't look at the president's legacy now until the end of his administration, because he's saying this is a big score point in my anti-corruption scorecard.
No, but I look at this slightly differently. I've raised this issue here, I think, a couple of times about checks and balances. When the National Assembly refused to confirm this person, the presidency went to the courts and got a court order. Now, the courts will rule on, like I like to quote Wendell Holmes Jr., the Supreme Court's Justice in the United States of America, who said this is a court of law, not a court of justice. It's completely different. The courts will rule on technicalities, merits, what have you. The idea is not to give you justice. They just apply the law. The fact of the matter is our Constitution allows for the separation of powers. It was wrong, it was remiss of the executive to try and sidestep the National Assembly in that manner just because you don't get along with whoever it was. That was a mistake, and that needs to be acknowledged. So
would you say that this was the justice that Nigerians didn't get at the courts? This revelation was the justice?
Because this is it. The same thing the DSS, who actually work under the presidency, accused Mr. Magu of doing, is what he's been accused of doing now, 4 years later. So it's really somewhat ridiculous, frankly.
Well, anyway, we need to take a break. But yesterday we addressed this same issue on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show with Norris Nkekas, SAN, and AJ Owonekoko, SAN.
Okay.
And one of them said, look, the government even owes the National Assembly an apology.
Okay.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Now is the turn of our ever-reliable Rotus Odiri to give us Africa Business Update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Tundu.
Good morning.
And good morning, Rufai. Good morning to the three of you. Yeah, so we're starting off with the Minister of Finance. Lots of webinars over the weekend, starting from Friday up through Sunday. And she actually was taking folks through, that is the public as well, investment public, through the draft of the medium-term expenditure framework for 2021 through to 2023, looking ahead as far as the government revenues are concerned, how we're going to manage things with regards to revenues and expenditures, and balancing our budget, borrowings, and so on and so forth. So one of the things to look at here is like a couple slides I'll just throw in for us to take a look at with regards to our revenues and our expenditure for January through May. The last time we did this, we looked at January through March, and we saw then that 99% of our revenues were eaten up by debt service. So with regards to what we'll do is we'll take a look at the revenues for this presentation that was done by the Minister of Finance. Again, it was virtual. It was a virtual conference because of the COVID-19 pandemic. People can't gather physically. If we take a look at if our revenues, we should put that up there. You'll see that we brought in about 1.4 trillion naira. There it is at the top. Federal retained earnings, retained revenues. Now you'll see that there's three columns there. The 2020 revised budget that they've projected 5.3 trillion. There's the pro rata, which is January through May. Essentially, you're dividing 5 trillion by 12 months, and then you're looking at just 5 months of that period, and then prorating what those revenues are expected to be. So it's expected to be 2.6 trillion for January through May. If you look at what's highlighted under the actuals, we brought in 1.4 trillion. If you go to the variance and you look at what's circled in red, we underperformed those revenues by 44%. If you look down at the entire column of all those figures there, you'll see that it's pretty much only minerals and mining revenue which we came in at 7% of what was projected, 85 billion naira versus 79. But everywhere else it was an underperformance, and it's understandable. Revenues are projected this year to fall by 65%, according to the document from the Minister of Finance. So keep that figure in mind, 1.4 trillion naira. If we now go to our expenditure side, you'll see that the expenditures we came into about 3.3 trillion, which is more than double the revenues that we brought in. But the key thing to look at, if we jump over to our next slide for viewers to take a look at, the key thing there is if you look down at the highlighted parts, debt service. Debt service came in at 1.069 trillion. So if you calculate that, if you are bringing in 1.4 trillion naira in revenue and your debt service is 1.069 trillion, that is 72% of your revenue. So it is still alarmingly high with regards to how much money of our revenues is going to servicing our debt. That's basically 72 naira out of every 100 naira of revenue that comes in that is being spent on debt servicing. So with Nigeria continues to need to borrow funds to plug the deficit gap, and this is going to be a concern moving forward. To our next topic, the National Theatre. Arise News already covered this handover. You can see Minister of Information and Culture Alhaji Mai Mohammed. You can see CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele. You can see Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu. This was the handover that had already been talked about since October of last year, where it was said that the central bank, the federal government is going to be handing over the National Theatre renovations to the Bankers Committee. Bankers Committee is made up of the chief executives of the commercial banks of Nigeria, chaired by the central bank. It has been estimated that about 20 billion had been set aside for these renovations to take place. Now the thing is, this announcement was made back in October of last year, before there was any pandemic, and this is a theater we're walking through. It's a closed space. So if you think of your ROI, your return on investment on what you're going to be spending on this, and also this is in partnership, I should add this, Lagos State Government, Ministry of Sport, Youth and Sports, along with the Bankers Committee, they're all coming together to put this project forward in order to provide jobs and opportunities for the youth. But with regards to where we are with the pandemic and how things move forward, how will you be able to make that money back? Since not too many people can be gathered in spaces and so on and so forth. But it's something that we'll have to see how it works out. But still, that ceremony went well, and it's a promising effort with regards to the job potentials for the youth, with regards to the National Theatre. Our next topic is regards to Mr. Prem Watts. He's been called the Warren Buffett of Canada. He's half Indian, half Canadian. He runs Fairfax Financial Holdings. It's a company that has various investments around the world. They are partnering with Helios Investment Partners, which is co-founded by these two gentlemen, Taiwo Lawani and Babatunde Soyoye, private equity company that's been focused on African investments since 2014. They are joining forces to create Fairfax Helios Partners Investment, which is going to be a pan-African investment firm that will primarily be looking at investing across Africa. It's going to be listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange, majority owned by Fairfax Financial. In fact, their subsidiary is Fairfax Africa. Fairfax Africa Holdings is a subsidiary of Fairfax Financial Holdings. So this partnership is going to primarily be looking at investment opportunities around the continent of Africa. Taiwo Lawani, Babatunde Soyoye, they've been running this company Helios since 2014, and it's promising with regards to foreign direct investment. So they'll be looking for opportunities in Nigeria, in South Africa, in Kenya. Of course, they'll be looking at, they'll be concerned about how, of course, the investment environment looks before they go in. But generally, it's positive. We want to hear about new investments coming into Africa. It's foreign direct investment, hopefully, and we'll see how that goes. So that announcement was made very, very recently. And then finally, the president of Egypt, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, announced that new vehicles in Egypt are going to have to be using natural gas, not liquefied natural gas. This is CNS, compressed natural gas for vehicles, which he says is going to be cheaper for Egyptians to fuel their cars, cheaper than petrol. Of course, some of the engines do run on petrol and natural gas as a combined option, but as far as the mileage on the vehicles, apparently the studies show it's a lot longer. He says that the cost of converting a lot of vehicles in Egypt from fuel to natural gas is going to cost about 8 billion Egyptian pounds, which is about $500 million. It's going to include buses and cabs. So it's a renewable energy drive that Egypt is looking ahead to consolidate on. So we'll see how that goes as well. And that's the update.
I mean, I'm very excited about that, Rotus. If you remember, I'm sure you were still in America when the Obama administration had what we call the cash for clunkers.
Right.
You remember that project? A lot of billions spent into it. If you had old clunker, like they called it,
right,
cars that were not fuel efficient any
right
longer, they give you some money to buy a new one,
right,
and that's good. At first, it will create a lot of jobs in Egypt. The economy has been down. Secondly, it will help for the environment and things like that, and help to make the environment cleaner, because this is more efficient than fuel. And I'm really excited about Canada, because Canada is one top nation, but they don't do a lot of investments in Africa and Nigeria. In fact, I was on a call with Andrew Nevin, and he was talking about the possibility of getting some Canadians to come into the Nigerian market, because we don't have a lot of investment as regards Canada having investments in Nigeria and it trickling down. So I'm excited about that. That's just one out of so many to come. Indeed. And these are great possibilities.
Indeed, indeed.
Well, Rotus, I don't know how much time we have, because I would like to comment on the National Theatre subject that you brought up.
I knew you would.
If I had time, I could spend 1 hour on it, given my background in theatre and culturology.
Yes.
But it is as follows. I would like to raise a number of questions. If you look at the report, yes, it looks good. They're talking about creating jobs. They're talking about an investment of 25 billion. But there are many questions that should be raised. One, we've been on the issue of the National Theatre, whether it should be concessioned or privatized, since 2006, under the Obasanjo administration. And you had persons like Colonel Tunde Akogun, Dr. Agada, and also the Coalition of Nigerian Artists profiling ideas. And of course, since then, we've had that issue about what should be done. The question is the artistic community involved in this? I do not think so. Many of the people that I saw there, how did they arrive at the decision to hand it over to the bankers community? The only person I saw there was Grace Gekpe, who probably has some ideas about how the theater should be managed. Right. Most of the other people are just business people. Now, what exactly is their interest? They're talking about the theater, 7 billion that will be devoted to that. Now, that theater is a community symbol. Now, we have to be worried about that. Now, they're saying they will use 18 billion to upgrade the land around the area. What exactly are they interested in? Land or theater or culture? So these are many of the questions. And then finally, that theater is already a matter of litigation, because it has been concession to Jadia's Trust. And Jadia's Trust, I'm aware, is in court. and raising questions. So many dimensions of the matter to look at.
Indeed.
Maybe we'll have another opportunity some other day.
Solid questions, Doctor. Solid questions.
Thank you, Reuters. You heard it from the theatre aficionado. And now we're joined by Michael Wilson from London with Global Business Updates. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. It's a China story, first of all. Stocks firming up there, given China's policy steps to support the economy, which we were talking about on Friday. And certainly that started investors getting interested in the stock market again. They're going to offer more financial support for companies and more financial support for employment in the second half of the year. Japanese stocks did well, and that was really on the back of tracking on Wall Street because of that positive analysis. I'm sure you covered that over the weekend about this COVID-19 drug. It's very important to understand that it's not a vaccine. What it is, it's if you're suffering from COVID-19, it's additional protection to stop you actually dying. It's called remdesivir, and we have actually touched on that before, but it's going for clinical trials. They'll be needed, obviously. In terms of vaccines, again, some more health stocks going up on Friday and adding to this general optimism. I have to say, I think it's pretty misplaced because there's a long, long way to go, but BioNTech and Pfizer are working on a potential vaccine for COVID-19. And BioNTech said that their vaccine might receive approval from the FDA in the United States by December. We'll see about that. Here in the UK, this isolation of China feeling around the world is continuing here. We're looking to what we call our Five Eyes security partners, which is United States, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, to look for ways to curb Huawei's involvement in UK networks. As you know, we talked about it last week. Australia has stopped any involvement of Huawei in its technical networks, and Canada is thinking about it. But here's the other side of things, that lots of stories are going around, and no doubt coming from Huawei themselves, saying actually, of course, it's going to put your 5G, if you want that kind of thing, back a long way. It's going to cost a lot of money. As far as money's concerned, we're always on about it, aren't we? Here, the UK debt pile, that's going to be huge by the time the 45 billion of government money to cover 1 million businesses begins to run out. So the Treasury is actually working on that. Now, we've got a big week ahead. Let me run through it very briefly for you. ECB rate meeting on Thursday, European Central Bank. It increased its pandemic emergency purchase programme to 1.35 trillion euro, and it's pushed the time horizon for that back to June next year, so in other words 12 months time. And the bank, as you know, also downgraded its growth forecast, so there's a little to look at there. And the ECB needs to formally respond to a challenge from the German court about this, which I'll come on to in just 1 second. It will also, ECB may give us an idea of how it's going to help what they call fallen angels. These are companies that have taken aid, and they were investment grade. Now they're junk bond grade because of the way things have gone down. Will they help them? And it's all, as far as Europe's concerned, moves towards Friday, where there is the big summit about the Pandemic Recovery Fund. And you remember we were talking on Friday about this Frugal Four, including Holland and Austria and Denmark, saying that, why should we be funding southern countries who are not in control of their economies and have flagrantly stepped aside from the central rules of the EU. Will there be some sort of unified response to this? Will those countries be strong-armed into agreeing? Very, very difficult to say, because and apart from anything else, the populist movement, which is running very, very high through European countries, particularly Greece, Spain and Italy. And remember that those countries are facing up to a summer without many tourists as well. And they depend hugely on that. We've got some China trade figures. We've got industrial production and we've got retail sales this week from China. And exports in China really only improved, as again we talked about, because of the PPE stuff that started that they were exporting, because a lot of European countries and indeed African countries didn't have enough of this equipment and cover at the beginning of the pandemic. Whether there'll be a V-shaped recovery there, we don't know. UK monthly GDP tomorrow, and Thursday unemployment here. Again, I won't take you through those figures because we probably don't have time, but anyway, we'll see if there's going to be any improvement. Doubt it very much indeed. But the big one, the real big one here this week is the US banks reporting season. JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, Goldman, Bank of America. Now, the question is, will they report better than people expect them to do? I would suspect it's going to be a very, very sad tale. There were some stress tests which were carried out by the Fed on these banks, and altogether they have got to put aside $25 billion to take care of bad debts as far as this reporting season has been concerned. So we'll see about that. I think it's going to be a fairly tearful week, but it's like anything else. If the results are slightly better than terrible, then the stock market will appreciate that. I'll just rush you through commodities first of all. Gold, as you know, did well last week. Copper also, that we take that Dr. Copper, proxy for world demand, is doing reasonably well. Oil gained ground on Friday, but remember there's an OPEC meeting on Wednesday. Now, as I say, I don't take a lot of store by OPEC, but I would prefer to look at demand and rig count and all the rest of it. But there is a feeling that OPEC will say either they will increase production or decrease it slightly. I suspect they will crimp production slightly, which will push the oil price up. That's your global stocks for Monday morning.
Well, Michael, I wanted you to comment a little more on OPEC. OPEC is meeting Tuesday and Wednesday, and the expectation is that they may increase output. Now, what is that based on? Is it that the worst is over?
What it's based on is that, now let's just do OPEC to start. I don't really understand OPEC, to be honest. I don't really understand why an organization like that, which is supposed to be a cartel, which is supposed to work in favor of its members, actually doesn't. So that's the reason why they might be talking about an increase in production, because some of its members are saying we aren't getting enough revenue from where the oil price is at the moment. So that's number one. Number two, do they want the oil price to go up? Yes, they probably do. Will OPEC Plus, which includes Russia, put pressure on Saudi, for example, to decrease so that the price goes up, so that non-OPEC countries and OPEC Plus countries get slightly more? It's a strange balancing act. Whether it has a role in today's global oil market, not quite sure about that, but it does continue. We do take notice of what it says. I suspect what they'll be saying is they will cut production very, very slightly. That's what the feeling is at the moment when they announce this on Wednesday.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Now for an update on the COVID-19 pandemic, we've been joined by Aaron Akirejada. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning, Tindu.
Good morning, Aaron.
Yeah, good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Tindu, by the way, we share some kindred spirit this morning. I like color coordinating a little bit. Doctor had to look by his side.
Are you sure?
Yes, we are.
Your color is different from ours. She's wearing lilac.
Now, let's get straight into the numbers today in terms of COVID-19. And as it actually stands right now, the World Health Organization has been sounding things off about the spread of COVID-19 and how it is rapidly deteriorating in several countries around the world. Yesterday being Sunday, we saw a record high. As a matter of fact, for the very first time since this pandemic actually broke, we had over 230,000 recorded cases. Previously, it was pegged at around 200,000. Yesterday was the highest we've actually seen, 230,000. As a matter of fact, bringing the particular full figure, 230,370. Now taking the total number to close to 13 million. To be precise, 12,910,357 are the number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 right now, which is quite worrying. And the WHO have been telling world leaders around the world that it is not over. As a matter of fact, the first wave is just beginning to gather momentum. Since we're talking about gathering momentum, let's turn our attention to the US, because in the US right now, you look at how things are actually playing out. That particular number is the number of cases in the US right now. 3.3, more than 3.3 million people have been infected, although President Donald Trump is still insisting that since the death rate is still a little bit low compared to the number of confirmed cases, and put in context that they've had close to about 40 million tests done, that it is still looking a little bit plausible, and that is why there's been a little bit back and forth with several states in the U.S. in regards to opening of schools, in regards to wearing of masks, and the latest one that is coming from the White House is the row between, or the disagreement between Anthony Fauci and President Donald Trump on the way to go in handling COVID-19. But one thing is certain, we look at Florida right now. Florida yesterday saw a major spike. As a matter of fact, the highest single-day record in the history of the pandemic in the U.S. was 15,300 for a single day, taking Florida's case to 269,803. We've had 4,241 deaths. Now, Florida is looking like the epicenter, all right, picking up. New York didn't even have this number, as a matter of fact. And this coincided with the fact that Walt Disney in Orlando, Florida, also opened yesterday. And I don't know if it is related. It's almost like a case of an owl cried in the night and a child died in the morning. But nevertheless, we know what is happening in the Walt Disney Center. The MLS is actually playing football matches there. The NBA are resuming there, and they will begin their own practice to resume play in that particular place. They're calling it a bubble at the moment, with the hope that people who come into the Walt Disney Center will be tested rigorously, not to make it spread further than it is. But we are seeing a huge spike in Florida. Also, Arizona, another state that is witnessing record numbers. Those are the number of cases, the 122,479, and the deaths are 2,239. So things are not really looking good in the U.S., and that is why people are beginning to ask questions about leadership. Should you be quarreling with or arguing or contending science in terms of Donald Trump arguing with Dr. Anthony Fauci, talking about their foremost disease experts in the U.S. At the moment, it's still touch and go. Whether or not they decide to open the schools, which I feel is a bad idea, looking at precedents from other places where they've actually opened too soon. Let's see how it goes. But at the moment, President Donald Trump is still insistent that schools will open by the 4th. Moving away from Africa, let's get in, from the U.S. into Africa. Africa is also seeing major numbers. As a matter of fact, South Africa are beginning to see a major spike. And yesterday, as a matter of fact, South Africa, because of the numbers they've actually recorded, they are now in the top 10 number of cases in the world, with close to about 300,000 cases. You can actually see that South Africa, without a doubt, is the highest in Africa, making up over 44% of the number of cases in Africa, followed by Egypt, then Nigeria, Ghana, Algeria, and Morocco. President Cyril Ramaphosa has actually put a ban on alcohol sales in South Africa to mitigate and also free up bed spaces in terms of, so that probably in case of all the trauma, accidents and incidences might just be reduced. Will that help? We'll have to wait and see. But it is really getting bad. As a matter of fact, governors and key places are telling them to shut up, because when you look at the numbers there, if we move on to the next slide, it probably explains what we are seeing in terms of numbers in COVID-19 in Africa now. And looking at it closely, if you can actually help me out, moving on to the next one. Yes, South Africa recorded 13,674 yesterday alone. You can compare that to what happened in Egypt, who had just over 1,000, Cameroon over 1,000, Equatorial Guinea over 1,000, then Ghana 922. So things are not really looking good. And the cluster of all this, as we move on to the next slide, is in that Gauteng region, whereby 98,431 has actually been recorded throughout this pandemic, which is the highest. It's really sad what is happening in South Africa, although some might say because South Africa are doing some massive testing, and that is the reason why we're seeing things happen. They've done well over 2 million tests at the moment, and they're still pushing to test more. But the cases are becoming outstanding. Lockdowns are beginning to happen again. And same thing with India, as we just try to wrap it up and come to you guys. India are also seeing a spike in numbers. As a matter of fact, when we look at the numbers, 28,701 was what was recorded yesterday. India is another place that are seeing massive surge. If they can help us with the next slide, because India also are doing massive testing, but the numbers are beginning to skyrocket. And with celebrities already contracted coronavirus, Ashwarya Rai, the beautiful Ashwarya Rai, and her family, her husband's family, have actually contracted this. And right now, they are hoping that people would actually pay more attention to this, keep safe, and let's see what becomes of it.
It's a Bachman.
Yes.
Yeah. You went to Ashra Rice. Amazing everybody's priorities.
Would you blame me? Would you blame me? Former Miss World.
I mean, when you said Mr. Bachan, my mind just went to Cholet.
Of course, we grew up with Mr. Bachan.
Anyway, Aaron, you made a point about leadership.
Yeah.
And I think that again and again we can't
overemphasize
that on this program. And Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus over the weekend said that the biggest challenge that we face right now is not even the virus itself, it is leadership and global solidarity.
Yes.
And he said that in the context of the setting up of a panel, of a review panel by the WHO, led by Helen Clark, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, and Johnson Sirleaf, Helen Johnson Sirleaf of Liberia. And what is required, I think, as we have seen in northern Spain, in South Korea, and now also in India, is that when things go out of hand, the leadership should be prepared to enforce lockdowns, as we have seen in those 3 places that I have mentioned. Florida, which you mentioned, if Florida were a country, it would be the 4th most affected country in the world.
True.
Because of the way the numbers have gone up there. But it's ironic that President Trump, again about leadership, is playing, back and forth with the challenge. Over the weekend, he at least tried to provide some leadership by, choosing to wear a face mask when he visited.
Long overdue, I must say.
When he visited a military hospital.
Yeah.
But then he's been strong on the reopening of schools. But in Florida, we have seen how reopening, easing the lockdown, can cause serious problems.
Yes, it does.
The only person who is looking good in this, in the United States, is the infectious diseases expert, Anthony Fauci, who continues to insist that the more you ease the lockdown, the more problems we'll have. But I guess in the face of COVID-19, the whole world is totally helpless.
And that's the problem, because all those places we've mentioned today, they are all easy lockdowns with the hope of saving the economy, but at the detriment to the lives and even livelihoods, because at the end of the day, they are looking like going back into another lockdown. South Africa, India, and also the US would actually at some point get back into, it might not be a full-scale lockdown, but they might have to get into segmented lockdowns.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron.